It's another Raw video from your favorite YouTube scout, Draft Raw Authentic, and today we're going to talk about the top interior defensive lineman or defensive tackle or 5 techniques in the 2019 NFL Draft. Even 1 techniques. We're talking about everything. Now, with that being said, in a previous video, I had talked about 2 players already on as edge guys, and they could actually kind of transition to be 5 techniques as well. But I'm gonna end up just talking about one of them in this video. So I'm gonna just start with him, Zach Allen. Zach Allen from Boston College. He's one of the top, to me, one of the top 5 techniques in this draft. From what I saw when it came to a guy like him, was he was one of the, let me get my notes here. He was one of the few guys that I actually liked a whole lot more than what people may or scouts may have said that they would like him. He used his hands a lot, which was very, very interesting to me, because he was batting down passes. The way that he was swiping, he just had a lot of movement. And why it was surprising to me, because I thought a guy, 6'3", 280 pounds, white player. I know I don't want, I'm not trying to, not racist or discriminatory, but you're thinking, okay, he's just a good little bull rush guy, good old boy, yada yada. And he was surprisingly quicker. He was surprisingly more athletic than what I thought. It was kind of weird because he played a little bit like J.J. Watt. And I don't want to put that on him, but I saw some J.J. Wattness to him, that told me, in watching him, that he is going to be a really good player within the NFL if he can carve his career out to be just, or at least somewhat like J.J. Watt, at least half of what J.J. Watt can do. And one of his biggest things that I really, really liked a lot was that he moved around from right to left. He wasn't a guy that was stationary on the right side or the left side or in the middle or whatever. He moved around the defensive line, and that was really, really huge for me. Excuse me. Another 5 technique that I actually really, really like is Rashawn Gary. Rashawn Gary, and actually, I'm not going to say I actually really, really like Rashawn Gary. It's just a guy that I think will be a 5 technique in the NFL. I don't think his best position is on the 3 technique, the defensive tackle position. I think honestly, just because of his size, he's one of those guys that's kind of a tweener. Like in a 4-3, you could play him on the edge, but you could also play him on the inside. Kind of like a Lamar Houston. They got drafted by the Raiders from Texas. He reminds me a little bit of him. And Lamar Houston, carved his NFL career out to be an okay, solid player. He was able to stay in the league for a pretty long time. So it ain't like he was just a guy that just kind of came in and then left. I think that's where Rashawn is going to be. There was a lot of things that I didn't like about Rashawn, and one of the biggest things had to do with his production. His production was really, really low, and that shouldn't be the determining factor on a player, but when it came to a guy like him, when your production low, you want to see other things. Like, you want to see, well, do they still get pressure? And I don't think he consistently did that for a guy that is looked at as being a top 10 pick in this draft, at one time a top 5 pick. And it's kind of crazy that they pushed him up there, but it's one of those things where, like a Laramie Tunsil that came out a couple of years ago, he gets pushed up higher because he was the number 1 player in his high school ranking coming out, and because he wasn't so terrible that it was kind of like, yeah, we can't put him up there. Just because he was okay as a player, they was able to keep him up there as being one of the top players in college football when he really wasn't. So that it is what it is. Another player is probably the last player that I would say will probably be more of a 5 technique guy, Dre'Mont Jones. It's about 6'4", 285, 290 pounds. Could also probably be a regular defensive tackle 3 technique, but very high energy. Loved his energy on tape, and I was surprised because I'm always not a big fan of Ohio State players, and he really surprised me. Another thing was that he had a pretty nice spin move that I saw a couple of times in at least maybe 1 or 2 games. even though he didn't really do nothing with the spin move, he showed that he was given versatility. He was showing more than one thing, and that was something that I liked. And the way he spent, it was smooth, it was nice. It seemed like if he refined his technique, he could actually use that in the NFL and be very, very good at it. Another thing that that I liked about him is obviously the quickness that he had, using the spin move. I thought he used his hands pretty well. Like I said, I was surprised about him as a player. I didn't know if he was going to be as good as I was thinking in my head. He moves really, really well. I mean, obviously because he's a pretty athletic guy. And like I said, the nice spin move, the quickness. So, the movement skills are pretty good. Pretty good. But the thing is, because he's such a kind of an undersized guy at the defensive tackle position, he's not a 300-pound big guy. He's not good against the run most of the time, and that's his only knock against him. But because he can rush the passer, it really gives him more of a higher. It gives him a higher ranking than what he would be. What he probably would have been a couple of years ago, where if he couldn't stop the run, it's kind of like, well, he's just a pass rusher. He's just a sub package guy, so we don't put him out there. But because most teams like to, pass the ball in this age of football, he's the type of guy that, is coveted a whole lot more than a regular old school solid defense tackle, which, I mean, everybody that's probably watched this video should already know. So anyway, those are my last 5 techniques. Now let's get to some 1 technique, some 3 techniques. Let's get to some guys that are on an interior defensive line that's not going to be a 5 technique or a 3-4 defensive end. Let's get into that. Quinnen Williams is quintessentially the top guy. There's nobody better than Quinnen Williams in this draft. Stopping the run, rushing the passer, it is what it is. So I'm not going to go mention to him. The media scouts can tell you about him. Ed Oliver, disruptive player, plays with so much energy, plays with so much power, speed, quickness, all of those different things. But what he lacks is finding the ball most of the time, and he lacks with being overly aggressive. His overly aggressive helped him out in past years of making plays here and there, and that's why a lot of people love him. But that really hurts him a lot in certain situations, especially in the division that he played in, because teams would run right past him, or you're able to block him a little bit better when you can use his aggressiveness against him. If he refines his tools, he could be a pretty solid player. I'm not his biggest fan overall, because I do think he's a little bit undersized, and he is a candidate that could. It's like it's hard to put him at 5 technique because he's too short to play the position, and then at defensive tackle it's like he's kind of a little bit undersized, and he's not exactly what Aaron Donald is, and that's why it's really, really hard with him. But overall, I think he has a lot of traits that have trained up well. He can be a really solid player, but I don't expect him to be a next Hall of Fame type of player or an elite player within the NFL for a couple of years, like certain players have come through in and out. Even if they're not a Hall of Famer, they were elite at some point when they was in the NFL. I don't know if Ed Oliver is that guy. Next on the list is Christian Wilkins. Christian Wilkins is kind of weird because I wasn't as impressed with his tape this year. Last year, the guy, it was like unstoppable. He was the best defensive player on that Clemson defensive line. But overall, it just wasn't clicking for me when it came to this year. There was some plays where, and he was double teamed sometimes and stuff like that. But there was plays where he didn't look as good as advertised. But I can tell you this, the guy can play the game of football. He's got certain things that he can do, certain traits. Once again, it's getting with a D-line coach that can teach him, refine some techniques. And a bigger thing is looking at tape and studying and stuff, because with his actual ability, if he studied tape and recognized different formations and stuff like that at the defensive tackle position, this dude could be a wrecking ball in the NFL. Trust me, because he's got a lot of traits that a lot of teams will like for their 4-3 teams. Next on the list, we're going to talk about Jeffrey Simmons. Jeffrey Simmons, Mississippi State, probably, to me, would probably be the second best defensive tackle in this draft. Same thing, just pass rushing ability, run stopping ability. He was one of the most solid guys for this position of the interior lineman. He used his hands well. He was pretty quick. He had solid power. He was just an all around player. It wasn't on the same height as a Quinnen Williams, but it was pretty darn close when it came to a guy like him. Next, we're going to talk about Jarrett Willis. Jarrett Willis is probably the most underrated defensive interior lineman in this draft. The guy has a skill set that is comparable to guys like Quinnen Williams, Ed Oliver, Christian Wilkins, Jeffrey Simmons. It is right there. The guy literally could honestly end up being the best interior defensive lineman in this draft. He could honestly be that, but there was one problem. Chris Lindstrom beat the crap out of him when Miami played Boston College. Now, Chris Lindstrom is probably the best interior guard in this draft, point blank, period. But the way he was able to manhandle Jarrett Willis kind of gets me to that point where it's just like, if he gets to the NFL, would he be taken out of games just like he was taken out of that Boston College game? And it's a question. He has all the traits in the world, but he's the type of guy that could literally disappear from a game, just period. But then also he's the type of player to have one of those games where it's like, he's unstoppable. And we've seen those type of guys before. I love Jarrett Willis because of what he can do and how he is as a player, but it's those things that kind of make you like, I don't know if I want to touch him. I don't know. Next on the list is Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence is the prototypical one technique type of guy. He can also play the through technique. I pretty much like Dexter Lawrence. He's got underrated pass rushing ability. He's definitely a good run stuffer. His pass rushing ability is not great. It's not great at all. But it is good enough to play in the NFL and for him to be considered one of the top interior linemen / defensive tackles in the 2019 NFL Draft. He's not as good as his partner Christian Wilkins, and I don't think his skill set comes anywhere close to the other guys that I named before him, besides Rashawn Gary. But I think that Dexter Lawrence is still a very, very solid player that, to me, he's probably the most safest pick at a defensive tackle because you know what you're getting. That's the biggest thing. You know what you're getting. And Quinnen Williams is one of those guys, too. You definitely know what you're getting when you get a guy like Quinnen Williams or like a guy like Jeffrey Simmons and a guy like Dexter Lawrence. So you're not expecting him to be a big-time pass rusher, but you are expecting him to stop the run. Next on the list, we're going to talk about Jerry Tillery. Jerry Tillery is got a really quick get off. He can get penetration very easily. He uses his hands well, high energy, and he had a very powerful. He was unstoppable versus Stanford. But his biggest problem is that in other games he literally disappeared. It's the Jarrett Willis type of effect. Both those guys kind of disappeared in games, and it's one of those things where they have so much potential, and I feel like Jerry Tillery has more potential because of his size and his natural strength and quickness. And it's like I don't know if he really loves football. I don't think he cares for it as much because he just takes off plays, and it's like it's very easy. It's in the blink of an eye. It's just like, I just saw you bull rush this guy, and now what are you doing? And it's very frustrating when you're watching him, when you're watching certain games, but you see the potential when it comes to him. But I would be warned when it comes to drafting him because you don't know what you're going to get. You may literally get a Robert Nkemdiche where he can be dominant and then can just be trash. And Jarrett Willis can be dominant and then be average. Jarrett Willis is never really trash. He can be average. Jerry Tillery can be dominant, elite, and then he's just garbage. So, it is what it is. Next on the list, surprising guy that I saw from UCF, Tyson Hill, natural destructor, natural penetrator, powerful punch. I mean, those are the things I really, really love about him. A lot of these next guys that I'm going to talk about, they're not really the greatest pass rushers, but they carry something with them when it comes to pass sets and whether they're quick, whether they get penetration, they'll stop a run. But the biggest thing is having powerful punches, jolting guys back, being able to kind of move guys a little bit. This is what some of these guys can do. And they're not as good as what you get with the Oliver and the Wilkins and the Simmons and the Willises and stuff like that and Lawrence's. But they do carry some stuff with them that could be essential for certain NFL teams, whoever drafts them. The next guy is Kalen Saunders. Quick, strong, and he's really, really hard to move. But he's from a small school, so it's one of those things. Is like, well, maybe those guys just wasn't as strong. But he's still a really, really big guy, and he's a very athletic player. I think he was the guy that I saw actually do a backflip, so it shows some athleticism there. But sometimes I didn't see it on tape as much when it came to the athleticism. And quickness and strongness kind of came and went, so it wasn't as consistent, but you did see it on different game films. So that's a plus for me. Next on my list is Daniel Wise. I think he played at Kansas. Quick, good hands. But the thing is, he needs a counter. He kind of just he rushes and then he doesn't know what to do after that if the initial first move doesn't work. But he can get good initial pressure, but he just got to learn to finish, and it kind of goes with the countering. He needs a counter. If you try to swim, and you don't really get it, then you need something where, I don't know, you can spin out of it and then kind of spin right back and get a swim. Like, you need something else. You need to have a plan. And I feel as though Daniel, he had a plan, but then he didn't know what he was going to do after the plan didn't work. So that was my whole thing. He just needs to learn how to finish. Boogie Roberts. Love Boogie Roberts' tape. Really powerful rush. Good hand power. Unexpectedly quick for his size. Natural penetrator. Very athletic. This guy, if I was to rate guys, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8. He'll probably be my ninth guy, and if he's my ninth guy, it's not even like, that's not a bad thing, because a lot of the other top guys would be number 1, 2s, or 3s in a lot of other drafts. So it says a lot when all these rest of these players are definitely like first 2-3 round picks, and you're a guy that really is a second round pick, but probably get drafted in the 3rd or 4th. So Boogie Roberts, I really, really like what he brought to the table. And he's a guy that, like I said, he surprised me with the way he played. Excuse me. Dalen Mack from Texas A&M. Hard to block when he got momentum or he had a good jump on the snap. But that's all I saw. I didn't see much else. I didn't see a guy that was hard to move. It wasn't like guys were putting him on the ground or they were like moving him around or anything like that. But it was one of those things where I think at the Senior Bowl with the one-on-one drills, he looked so great. But then when you watch the film and you watch the tape, it's not that he's not great, but he's kind of average. And that's what I see from him. He's just kind of an average defensive tackle. He's nothing really special, but I think he's still good enough to definitely just play in the league. And I don't think, you picking him, you're going to get a terrible player. You're going to get a pretty solid player. He ain't going to be no elite guy, but he's going to be pretty solid. And the last person, last but not least, Renell Wren. This is the last person that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 guys. He is my 15th guy. Renell Wren, power, quickness, athleticism. Disappointed with the tape because he doesn't know how to play the position. He has the most potential out of all of these players in terms of his size, his power, his quickness, his athleticism. It's all there. He just doesn't know how to play the position of defensive tackle. And it's the weirdest thing, but he gets lost. He doesn't know what to do with his hands. It's very weird to watch, but trust me when I tell you this. The potential that this kid has, like I said, he may not be Hall of Fame-wise or anything like that, but the potential that he has, a good defensive line coach could bring so much out of him. He could be the next Calais Campbell type of player. That's how good I think he could be. But he just needs to learn how to play the position. Sorry about that. He just needs to learn how to play the position. Once he does that, he'll be A-okay. He'll be right. So anyway, please comment, rate, subscribe. That was my last player I was going to talk about. Please comment, rate, subscribe again, like I said. I thank anybody for watching this video. Thank anybody that wants to watch me and talk about these players. I love you guys, and I hope all y'all have a good day and a good, Easter already passed, but I hope y'all have a good summer and everything. So anyway, thank you guys. Once again, this is Draft Authentic. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.